Hi, I'm Kate. I'm a photographer and I basically focus mostly on cosplay. What is cosplay? It is pretty much a costume that also has a little bit of role play. So there is a little bit of acting in it, and what I try to do is to capture this role play and the costume in a proper situation. So I like to search for good locations and use special effects such as fire and smoke, and we throw fabric around a lot. So that's basically what I do. And what I want to show you today is a little bit of a tutorial on Sonar Photo Studio and how to develop a picture and also how to edit some stuff. We're going to be focusing mainly on retouching, especially on face, highlighting eyes and removing pimples and little hairs and everything. So what we're going to do today is develop and then edit. We're going to start with a developing. So basically we have a portrait here that is a cosplay of Ciri. Now, that is a character from Witcher, the game, and we captured this picture during an event that specializes on shooting Witcher cosplays. So we're gonna start with white balance. Basically, what you want to do is determine the whole atmosphere of the picture. If you want to go for a little bit more dramatic, cold and grim, then you want to go down with the temperature to make it a bit more blue and white. If you want a warm and fuzzy feeling, then you can add a little bit of the temperature and make it a bit more yellow. I'm not saying that if you want a dramatic picture, it has to be cold, but it can. What I'm gonna do with this picture is I'm gonna go a little bit in between, because I think that the combination of white hair and golden crown is really good with a little bit of a warmer color. I'm not gonna change the tint, that is a little bit invasive and extreme, so you don't want to do that unless you have a very special picture for that. In the exposure, we're gonna do a lot of the changes that we can do since we have a raw picture. It contains a lot of information if it comes to colors and exposure, and you can do whatever you want. This picture is basically very dark, but since it's raw and it's full of information, what I can do is to go up like 1.5 or maybe even 2. It goes too much, it's too light for our purposes, but we can do that. What we want to do is to add about like a 1 point of exposure, so it stays a little bit dark and grim, because this picture is supposed to be a bit dark and grim, but we also want it to be visible. If it comes to contrast, you can add a little bit of contrast, because again, it gives the right atmosphere, not too soft. But if you go too up with the contrast, then you can change the colors and you can do it a little bit more extreme, which we don't want. It ruins the picture when you just go too much on the contrast. You can add a little bit of lights, but not too much. If you go down with lights, then you can make it like a little bit dead. It looks, if you go too down, then you are basically making it weirdly gray and with no spark. So you can add a little bit of lights, but you don't want to overdo it. If it comes to shadows, shadows are a great tool to highlight something that you have that is just a black blob. Basically, if she is wearing something black, in this case she is, when you go up with the shadows, you can see the texture of the black fabric. If you would go down with the shadows, it would just become a big black space. We don't want that. We want to see the highlights of the black fabric and the whole texture of the black fabric. So we add up a little bit of shadows, but we don't want to lose the whole black idea of the picture and the whole like darkness. So we're gonna compensate with a black point. So we go down a bit with a black point. So now the coat stays black, but you can still see all those little foldings here. For now, we have changed a lot, but still not too much. So we're gonna add a little bit of white point, because the white point makes the picture again a little bit more visible, but it won't ruin the whole idea that we have for the picture. What is gonna give you a lot of drama is the clarity. Basically, if you add clarity, it gives you, I would say, rather dramatic feel. So you can go up, like way up with the clarity, and it just gives you this really rough look. If you go down with the clarity, you can do that, but I wouldn't recommend that for pictures that are supposed to be a little bit more serious. You can just make it a bit blurry, so it kind of happens to be cute, or, you know, like springish, happy. So if you go down with the clarity, it makes it soft. But you don't want to overdo it again, because if you overdo it, then she just becomes a big blur. You lose the texture of the skin, you lose the details, and the whole picture just looks a little bit funny. You don't want that. If you go down with the clarity, what I would recommend is not going below 20 points, but it's very much up to you what you prefer. For my style, we go with the clarity up, way up, like 80, 85 points. So you can see the whole picture has changed a lot by using this. What happened is that the face suffered a little bit with adding the clarity. So if you want to help remove all the little details that were just highlighted by the clarity tool, then you can use the smoothing brush. Basically, you take the smoothing brush and you apply it only around the face. So the whole picture stays rough, but the face gets a little bit softer, not too much, just a little bit. You set the opacity and density in like somewhere in the middle, and you go down with the intensity a little bit and up with the detail preservation. You want to preserve the details. You just want to soften it up a little bit. If you want to see the strokes of the brush, then you need to show a mask. So you just click this here, and then every stroke of the brush is visible as you do it. As you do those strokes, you want to hold your mouse all the time, because if you let go and you start stroking again, you are creating like a little, like another layer. You don't want that. You want just one layer. So what I recommend is to do one stroke at the time, like you hold the mouse all the time and you don't go stroke over stroke. So we fill the face with this brush, and we don't want to go into the eyes, of course, and we don't want to go into the mouth. Those two should stay untouched by this brush. We want to go around the mouth and around the eyes. If it happens that you somehow like go somewhere you don't want to go, then you can just remove that piece of a brush by remove from mask tool. You just click this, and every stroke you do takes what you did back. So if you just go accidentally into mouth or eye, or here we went a little bit into the crown, we can just remove it. And there we got only one layer, only one mask that we created on the face. Now, if we turn off the mask, we can see it already has an effect on the face. When I turn it off, I see it is rougher. When I turn it on, I see it is a bit softer. We can go maybe a little bit more in the intensity here, and we can, I think we can do this. Maybe what we want to do is to remove the strokes from the scar. The scar was made extra. She doesn't actually have that scar, and it should be a bit more rough since it's a scar. So we remove it from the scar, and we got the face is a little bit softer, yet the whole picture is a little bit rough. But it has to be in a good balance. You don't want to have a rough picture with extremely soft face. You just have to go, or you should go the middle way. That's what I always say. Don't overdo anything. If you overdo it, it looks bad. So if we're happy with this, we can close it. and we can keep going in the edits. Now, what happened in this picture is that on one half of her face is a little bit darker. So if you want to highlight that, if you want to use that in your advantage, then you can maybe take this radial filter and like put it on the left part of her face, so that you underline a little bit the darkness that's there, so that you can actually do this half and half face. And you don't want to have the exposure that low. You want to go like minus 0.4, 0.5 maybe, to do this effect where you get the other half a little bit darker. If you want to like make it a little bit more splashed into the picture, you can go a little bit higher on the gradient width. So that's something that you can use to like make certain places of the picture lighter or maybe darker, or even if you want it a little bit more saturated, if you just want to go a little harder with the shadows, whatever location on the picture you apply this filter on, you can just adjust to whatever you need. Or you could use the brush, the filter brush. So basically you applied it wherever you want, and then only in that space you can again adjust all those sliders. So we're gonna move on to the color, and first of all, this is a little bit more colorful than we would like, well, I would like. What I do is that I go down with the vibrance. I think it gives it a little bit more serious, dark and grim, again, feeling. That's what I'm trying to achieve, because the whole idea for this picture is given by Witcher, and the game gives me this vibe, this feel. So that's where I'm aiming for. So I want to go down with the vibrance a bit. I will leave the saturation where it is though, because I don't want to take all the colors out of it. And that would probably happen if I also decreased the saturation. So now if we want to play with the colors, we can, because the color shift option is huge. You can take hue, you can take saturation, or you can take the luminance. However you want. You just grab the tool, you click and hold any color you're looking for, and then you go either down or up or however you need with it. Well, it might happen that if you're just grabbing the red dye, then you can see the whole face and surrounding is adjusting. If you don't want that, if you just want to move a particular color, then what you want to do is to go into the advanced. When you go into the advanced and you select the color that you're looking for and you show the mask, then you can see right now you have everything that contains red in it. You don't want that, so you want to grab this tool, this circle, and you want to move it so that you get only what you want, blue. You can see there are still some leftovers around, so you can just move this and you can get to the point where you only have what you're looking for, which means the little piece of the blouse here. So once you've got that, you can unshow the mask and you can do whatever you want. You can just grab this and you can do it green, and you can see only the color of the blouse is changing. If you want to make it a little less saturated, again, you can do that. So you can play with the colors a lot. If you wanna grab the green here and you wanna do it a little bit more orange so it has more autumn vibe, you can. You can also turn off the limited slider range. And basically any color can now go all the way. Be very careful with that because it's extremely sensitive and you can like overdo it and you can do some extreme things there. If you don't want that, really, really be careful. So what I recommend is to have that on until you go extreme. So for now you can see we are making some severe changes, but that's still not all. Split toning is a fun tool to use, and what is my favorite part is shadows. Shadows, you can take only the shadows of the picture, or only the lights, or the whole picture, and you can adjust it a little bit, or you can just adjust it a lot. But I wouldn't recommend it, because if you see, if I grab it and go all the way here, it is basically too much. So what I want to do is to go with the shadows a little bit into the blue. If you add a blue to the shadows, you again get a little bit colder feeling. If you want it to do a bit warmer feeling, that you can go into the red area with the shadows. But we want it a bit colder, so we go a little bit here. If you want to play with it a little bit more, not just in this circle, then you can click here. And you can adjust the saturation, you can add a lot of blue, a little bit, you can change the hue and the balance, however you need. Every picture is different, so you have unlimited options about what to do. And basically the best option to find out what's the best is to try and try and try. If it comes to shifting primary colors, then you can experiment a little bit. If you want to lower the saturation of all the red, you can of course go, but then you are again stealing a little bit the color away. So if you don't want your picture to end up almost black and white, then be very careful about it. And the hue can also be very aggressive. On some pictures it looks very good. So just go and experiment, click your buttons. This is too green, this is too purple. So in here it doesn't have the wanted effect, but you can actually create a lot by moving this. If I only remove the saturation of green, you can see that the picture still has colors, because here the main color would be red. So it still stays in the blouse. This would be without the green, and this, what I mean with the green, and this without the saturation of the green tones. So you can move it a little bit here just to make it less green, because green is fresh color and we don't want fresh colors in this picture. It's supposed to be winter-ish, darkish. If you have some noise on the picture, oh, of course, don't forget to click this tool again when you want to go on, because if it's this click, it's this click as you move around this whole area. Now we don't want that, so unclick the tool and we can go to the noise reduction. If you are forced to shoot with a very high ISO and the picture contains a lot of noise, then you can remove it only from bright places or only from colorful places. But be very careful, because when you do that too much, it gets a little bit blobbish. It gets very flat and very weirdly smushed. You don't want that. You can remove the noise a little bit. It can help your picture to look a bit more smooth, but if you overdo it, you can ruin your picture. So don't worry if it gets a little bit noisy, it's okay. We're not going to remove it from this picture though, because it was ISO 200, as you can see. We're going to move to the last part of the develop, and that would be vignetting. I like to use that especially on portraits. If you shoot people, the people are the highlight of the picture and you want whole focus on them, on the face, on the person. So if you apply the vignette, then you give it dark edges and you highlight the face in the middle. Be careful though, because there are some catches. First of all, I like to use the color vignette because it is not that aggressive. So if you use the color vignette, it gives you the right amount of dark edges. If you go for the exposure vignette, it is too much. It looks very, very unprofessional, I would say. So what I recommend is using the color. It gives you the right tone. But be careful, because if you know that in the editor later you're gonna adjust some things in the corners, don't use the vignette, because it will change the exposure in that area and it will be harder to use the surrounding to copy or to retouch anything. If you know that you're gonna change something in the corners, then I would recommend using the vignette in the editor. The editor also contains the tool vignette. So here we know that we're not going to change anything, and we know that she is in the middle and that we want her face to be the important part. So that's why we add the vignette. You can see it helps you focus a bit more to the middle. So here we go. Here, when you look at it, you see what we did before and after. And basically, if you like that edit, if you like what you did and you think it would look good on another pictures, then you can just save it as a preset for yourself. You just go here to presets and you click this little plus and you name it like my preset, or you can like name it anything you want and you just save it. You can choose what parts of the develop process you want to save, because some things are only applicable on one picture, some are applicable on more pictures. So you choose which parts of develop process you want to save and you click OK and it's saved in your presets. If you don't want to save it as a preset, but you just want to use it on another picture from one set, then you basically copy to your clipboard all the settings that you just made. And again, you choose which parts of develop you want to save, you click OK, then you go to another picture, and here you just click paste. And the whole setting is applied to another picture. So about develop, this would probably be all. And now we're gonna move to editor. We're gonna change a picture. We're gonna take a little bit different picture. We've got a lot of details here on the face. So what we wanna do is we wanna remove the little hairs here in the editor. We also wanna highlight the eyes a little bit, remove the pimples. And because I really want to show you how to use Liquify, I'm gonna adjust her nose a little bit, but I recommend consulting that with the model, because adjusting things like body parts is very invasive and it's not recommended. But because I want to show you how to do that, I'm gonna adjust her nose a little bit. What we're gonna start with is we're gonna go into retouching tools. And here we're gonna grab clone stamp. Now you have two tools that you're gonna use. One is the clone stamp, the other is a healing brush. Now the healing brush is a little bit smarter than the clone stamp. It knows a little bit about the surrounding where you copy. So it can be very easy to use, but be careful. When you take a cloning brush, it takes the information and it clones it exactly. If I take this area and I click here, it clones exactly what it sees. If you take the healing brush, it is smarter. It thinks about the location where you're putting the source and it adjusts it a little bit. So you can see that it's adjusting what I'm copying to the surrounding of where I'm copying it. But sometimes the cloning brush has disadvantages, like if I copy from here to here, it works with the surroundings, so it will take the eyebrow, and as you say, it will copy the dark from it, so it will just make a dark smush. We don't want that. So what we want to do here, we want to remove the hair with the clone stamp. We take the clone stamp and we make it a tiny little bit so that it just covers the hair. We go full opacity, full density, and pressing the control, we click the source location, and now it moves with the brush as we stroke it. If you want the location to stay the same, you just unclick aligned. So now I have the location and you see it doesn't go with the brush, that's where I put it. But I want it to be aligned, so I want it to move as I click it. With this tool, you can remove all the hair from the face. You can remove all the pimples. I will not show you the removal of all the hair because that takes a little bit time. Be patient with it. Don't worry if it takes too much time. Just don't go too big on the brushes because then it would look unnatural. Like if I grab the brush and I make it big so that I can remove the hair quickly, you can see it gives you these weird places that look unnatural. That's because we're being a bit too rushed. We need to be a bit more patient. You can use this brush, the clone stamp, to remove pimples, but sometimes it's better to use the healing brush because again it's a little bit smarter. You just need to be careful around the areas where you have a color difference. Here you can see it's making it dark again. That's because it's cloning this color from here. So again, this would be better with the clone stamp. If the clone stamp goes too aggressive, you can just go down with the opacity and density a little bit so that it doesn't copy exactly what it sees. It's, you just need to click it a bit more often, but it does not clone the colors from around. And now, with the healing brush, you can remove all the pimples that you see. Like here's a little bit pimple, so just anything you see that doesn't belong to the face, you can remove with the healing brush. Or if the healing brush is not working out for you, you can use the clone stamp and decrease opacity and density. If you see a little bit of hair, like it happened here, you can again use both of these tools, but you just need to be patient with it again and do it with the very small tools. Here it doesn't really matter if you use the healing brush or the clone stamp. It both has very similar effect in these areas that are all the same and do not have color differences. This place is basically the same all over. So if you want to remove the little hair, just go careful with the little tools, either healing brush or the clone stamp, and you can work through it. With this you can remove pretty much everything from the face, the little hair, the little pimples. This little thing actually belongs there, it's part of your makeup, don't remove that. Or you can remove these little leftovers from the eyebrow. That should not be there. You can do whatever you want. So what we're gonna do next is this dark area under the eye. So basically there are two levels of these. One that you want to remove and one that you don't want to. These wrinkles and these dark places right beneath the eye belong there. If you remove those, then she will look extremely unnatural. She look like an alien. You don't want that. Like you can see, if I remove it completely, then it looks seriously strange. So we don't want to do that. What we want to do is to remove just the outer circle, this one. I do not recommend using a healing brush because again it will copy the dark area and it will make dark smudges here. You don't want that. So basically you can use the clone stamp, but you want to go down with the opacity and density. Play with it a little bit more until it's perfect, but these wrinkles in the dark area, it really should stay under the eye. If you want to make it a little bit lighter so it's not that dark, then you can grab Dodge. You just set the range to shadows and you go a little bit light under the eye so that you remove the darkness, but you really want to keep the wrinkles. You really want to leave the human anatomy where it is. If you want to highlight a little bit of the makeup, then you can grab Burn. You can set the range to shadows, make it a bit bigger, go down with the strength, go like somewhere in the middle with the opacity and density, and just take a couple strokes, and you can see that it highlights the makeup a little bit. It helps the liner, the shadows a bit, and you can also use it for eyebrow. Just be careful, because if you go too much, then it starts changing the contrast and the color. So just be gentle with that tool. And now what we want to do is to highlight the eye a little bit. What I recommend is to grab this effect brush, make it very small. And first we want to set it to saturation. We want to go up with the saturation. You can either add it or you can decrease it by going into minus. We want to decrease it. We want the green eye to be a bit more greener. So we just go around the eye like that a little bit. We have to do it in both eyes. They have to be similar. And then we want to grab the dodge tool again. We're gonna set it on lights this time. And if we go a bit, or on the reflection that is in her eye, then you can make it a bit sparkly. You don't want to overdo it though, like this should be enough. What is the last thing that we want to do? There is way more to do, but we just want basics. We want to use the Liquify Frame, as I promised. First, we want to move things. So we're gonna grab move, and we're gonna move this little lump here. And because it changes the whole surrounding of the place we moved, what you want to do is grab smooth and smooth it around a little bit, so that what we grab stays where we put it, but the surrounding goes back, so that you cannot see that you moved it. If I apply this, you can see only the little lump has changed. Now, if I, for example, wanted to move her eyebrow for some reason, then if I change it, you can see I'm changing the surrounding, the eye and everything. So if I wanted to move it, then I would have to take the smooth tool and I would have to work hard so that the eye stays where it's supposed to be, but only the area that I want it to move is moved. It's a lot of work. The Liquify can really ruin your picture, so you have to be careful about it and really think about the usage. What I recommend is it can fluffen up the hair a little bit. If you have like slightly curly hair and you want them to be a bit more on volume, then you can take the stretch, you can stretch them a bit. If you want to fluffen up the dress, for example, again, it's doable with the stretch. You just have to be careful about the whole Liquify thing. But if you know how to use it, then it can be very, very useful. One more thing that we want to do is to make the nose a little bit smaller. Again, you really need to consider whether or not you want to adjust the model. It's totally up to you. If you want, you have the option. You can shrink it a bit, but what I would recommend personally is to consult that with the model. Some models have insecurities about their certain areas, and if you help them change that, then they might really be grateful. But if you change them without the consultation, they might even get offended that you had the need to change the way they look. So if we want to smaller the nose, then we're going to use the shrink tool. But after using the shrink tool, again, we have to take the smooth tool and smoothen it up around it a little bit. When we apply that, we can see the difference. It goes from the big nose into small nose, and we really need to be careful about how it changed the whole face. It changed it here a little bit. You would have to be a bit more playful with it to do it properly. Later we can show you how to work with the wig, because this wig, you can see the base of the wig, which is wrong. You don't want to see that. You would again use the clone stamp and a little bit of the healing brush. Basically what you need to do is to be a bit more patient about it, and you can make it so that it doesn't look like wig at all, but all the cloning that you do has to be logical, and it requires a lot of time and training to get there, but it's not difficult at all. So for now, this would be the basic retouching. I've shown you how to remove the hair, how to smaller things. If you want to see the done picture, then I would show you here. So I really hope that you enjoyed the video, and hopefully there will be more in the future. If you liked the video, then totally give us a like and subscribe. If you'd like to say something, then definitely go into the comment section. If you are interested in my work, then you can find me on Instagram. And for now, this will be all.